So, today, we're going to dive into a philosophical text that makes a pretty bold claim that a single life, by its very nature, should only have one sex or gender. Let's really break down how the author builds this case, step by step. Okay, so right off the bat, the text doesn't mince words. It lays out its central idea right here. The very concept of one person holding two sexes is a fundamental break from the natural order. And this one sentence, it's pretty much the foundation for everything else we're about to see. Right, so you're probably asking, where does such a strong claim even come from? Well, the entire argument is built on this core philosophical idea, the principle of oneness. Let's dig into what that actually means. And look, this isn't some new idea. It's got deep roots in the ancient Taoist principle of Baoyi, which means embracing the one. In Taoism, there's this concept of the Tao, sort of the natural way of the universe. The thinking here is that everything in the universe has its own single unified nature, and the goal is to stick to that path, to be in harmony with the Tao. And to back this up, the author actually pulls a quote from the foundational text of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching. So what Laozi is saying here, according to the text, is that everything good, clarity, peace, even life itself, comes from achieving this oneness. And within this way of thinking, straying from that oneness is seen as going against the natural way of things. Okay, so now you can start to see how they're connecting these dots. The text takes this ancient philosophy and applies it directly to human gender. It suggests that a person with more than one sex is, by this very definition, breaking from the natural way. So in this view, it's not about expanding who you are, it's actually seen as breaking a fundamental rule of the cosmos. From here, the argument starts to zoom out. It takes this idea of individual oneness and applies it to, well, everything. The logic is that for anything to work, whether it's society or the whole universe, everything and everyone needs to have its own distinct, singular role. That's what creates harmony. And to make this point really clear, the author uses this great metaphor, the sun and the moon. Each one has its own job, right? The sun can't also be the moon. They are cosmic partners, and it's their separateness that keeps the system in balance. If you had something trying to be both the sun and the moon, well, in this way of thinking, that's just cosmic chaos. All right, so from the cosmos, the argument brings it right down to earth, to our social lives. The author argues that if one person tries to be a husband to someone and a wife to someone else, it causes the structure of society to break down. The point being made is that these roles are seen as totally separate things. And just to drive the point home, we get one last analogy: water and fire. They have opposite natures. They just can't exist in the same space. The text is using this to paint a picture of things that just fundamentally don't mix, really hammering home this idea of a single inherent identity. Okay, so next up, the author looks to the natural world, basically saying, hey, look, nature gives us the perfect blueprint for how things should be. It's presented as the ultimate model for clarity. And this is where we get this really memorable phrase that sums up the ideal state. The text describes it as taoliang, which means something like transparent or crystal clear. It's this idea that things are unambiguously what they are. There's no confusion, a mountain is just a mountain, its identity is distinct. Easy to understand. Now, the flip side of that clarity is something the text calls huanzhuo, which is like turbid or muddy. Imagine clear water getting stirred up with dirt. So when that clarity gets lost, when a mountain stops looking like a mountain, or to bring it back to the main argument, when a person's gender isn't clear-cut, the world becomes, well, muddy and confusing. Then the text lists these very specific examples from nature that it calls inauspicious signs, or signs of disorder. And why are they inauspicious? Because from this viewpoint, they go against that core principle of oneness. A rooster's nature is to crow, not lay eggs. So these aren't just weird quirks of nature. They're seen as signs that something is deeply wrong with the natural order. And this is where it all ties back together. The logic goes, if the hen crowing at dawn is a bad omen, a sign of disorder, then a person possessing two sexes is seen in the exact same light, as a signal that the natural order has been disturbed. Okay, so what's the big deal? What's the cost of all this confusion? Well, the final part of the argument lays out what the author sees as the real-world consequences of this ambiguity for society as a whole. So here's the chain reaction the author describes. It starts with one person, right? An individual whose identity is seen as ambiguous. That ambiguity, the text argues, creates a ripple effect. It causes confusion for everyone they interact with. People don't know how to categorize them or how to relate to them.
And when you have that kind of confusion happening all over the place, the argument is that it eventually leads to widespread social chaos.
And this simple quote really sums up the whole social argument. The text is drawing a direct line. Clarity equals peace and order, which means that confusion is the enemy of peace. From this perspective, a stable society absolutely requires the kind of clarity that ambiguity is said to destroy. And so, we end up right back where we started, with this powerful idea of clarity. This entire case is built on the foundation that things should be simply what they are. It leaves us with one final, pretty thought-provoking question, using its own central metaphor. By asking what happens when a mountain no longer looks like a mountain, it kind of forces you to think about what identity and order really mean, and about the lines we all draw to make sense of our world.